Tonight, water quality still #1 concern, analysing spider DNA and the Tauranga Mea. Kia ora and good evening. Welcome to Central News on TV Central for Tuesday, the 24th of March. I'm Amanda Harper. In today's news, water quality is still a #1 concern for Waikato residents, and the long-term plan consultation document from the Waikato Regional Council addresses this concern, but is still wanting feedback from the public as well. Chairperson Paula Southgate says the council have been working on improving water quality for a number of years.
We have been working in the water quality space for quite a long time. In the past, we've been looking at point source discharges. Those are the sort of direct discharges from factories, from stormwater, where you can actually see where the pollution comes from. And we've done a great deal over the last number of years to stop that. So very little of that is occurring, or none should be.
The council are part of the collaborative stakeholder group, and they've all been working on policy to help restore and protect the health of rivers, and want the public to give feedback in a series of drop-in sessions that will be held around the Waikato region. Details can be found on the council website. 2 Waikato students have spent 10 weeks on a University of Waikato summer research project analysing spider DNA. Nigel Banks and Annie West say they weren't fans of arachnids before the project, but now have a greater appreciation for the creatures. Annie says the most surprising thing was the colour range, where a number of spiders looked completely different in terms of their colouring, but after DNA analysis they found they all belonged to the same species. Supervised by Associate Professor Ian Hogg from the Faculty of Science and Engineering, Nigel and Annie's project was entitled Biodiversity and DNA Barcoding of New Zealand Spiders. It was their mission to catch and sample spiders to contribute new sequences to the Barcode of Life data systems. Accessible Properties already provides housing on a large scale throughout the country, but remains committed to pursuing the purchase of housing from the New Zealand government. The company was established with a focus on providing housing to people with disabilities, but the scope has now been extended to the wider community, and tenants include people who qualify for the government's income-related rent subsidy program. Accessible Properties Chair Paul Adams says we all know there is a great demand for good quality affordable housing in New Zealand, but he says by the end of 2015, with nearly 200 new homes being built, that it's not nearly enough to meet demand. While the Australians stole the show on the final day of the Ripkeel Grom search, it will be Mount Mauganui's Kehu Butler and Raiha Ensa who will represent New Zealand at the International Ripkeel Grom search final. In clean but small waves under 1 metre at Fitzroy Beach, New Plymouth, both Butler and Ensa finished runner-up in their respective under-17 divisions. As a result of their performances, the pair will head to Brazil in little over a month to represent New Zealand in the final. The global event sees under-17 champions from regions including Australia, the States, Chile, New Zealand, Indonesia, Europe and Brazil face off for the chance to become part of Grom search history. The event has grown into one of the biggest in the world, with the first international final held at Bells Beach in 2005. This year's showcase will be held at Maresias Beach, Sao Paulo, Brazil, from April 28th to May the 3rd. And now for our region's weather. Hamilton, cloud increasing with late drizzle and light winds. High of 24 and low of 12. The rest of Waikato mainly fine with light drizzle. Pairo 23 high, 13 low. Matamata 21 and 13 low. Te Awamutu, your high is 24 with a 12 overnight low. And Tokoroa 22 and 13. And in the Bay of Plenty, Tauranga, cloud increasing, chance of late drizzle. High of 23 and 16. Te Puke, your high is 21 and overnight low of 16. And for the marine forecast, on the west coast Raglan, a variable 10 knots, high tide is at 2:53 p.m. And on the east coast Bay of Plenty, a variable 10 knots, developing northeast into 15 knots. High tide is at 12:05. Coming up in the show, Youth for Youth. Welcome back to Central News. workshops run by youth for youth in Hamilton. Manny and Harms from Te Ahurea Rangatahi are up next.
With Te Ahurea, we're quite fortunate to be able to go into lots of schools, mainstream school, native schools, alternative educations. A lot of our workshops are around health, based around health for youth, like sexual health workshops. We'll do workshops on reproductive system, STIs, contraception, conception of birth, relationships, stuff like that. Also around drugs and alcohol, effects to the body, social, whole lot of stuff. Health models as well, like Te Whare Tapa Whā is an awesome model to teach young people to find balance in life. And then we get to be able to use some of our own strengths, like do dance workshops, graffiti art workshops. And lots of many schools with so many different kids.
And is that how Te Ahurea Rangatahi started? Was that the core sort of reason?
Yeah, definitely. I would say back in '97, there's actually an awesome organisation from Auckland called Te Kaha o Te Rangatahi, and they started off this whole concept called Youth to Youth, which was young people educating to young people. And they came down to H-Town, schooled up some community, and those people birthed Ahurea, pretty much, Te Ahurea. And yeah, that was the main thing. They'd go around, take their babies into classrooms and just talk some real mother to father stuff in classrooms. And then over the time, it just got developed. FPA is an awesome organisation that supports us with lots of training and knowledge around sexuality, and as well as other orgs as well.
And what age group do you actually focus on?
Our focus is like intermediate and high school, like when we do our education. So probably about 11 to 18. But then in saying that, we also educate like adults. We teach other people. Yeah, so we have quite a broad range, but yeah, mainly the young, 11 to 18. Yeah.
And tell me about the kids. Are they quite receptive to your teaching styles?
Yeah, so I mean, 18 years in the game, obviously, Ahurea has got a pretty good formula going. So, we run a lot of energizers, icebreakers. We try to be receptive ourselves, so being really respectful in the classroom, really being attentive towards what they're saying as well, because, we're learning at the same time. So that's what it's all about. But yeah.
Is a lot of your focus within the lower socio-economic schools, the lower decile schools?
Yeah, I'd say and probably no at the same time. It's just depending who's requesting us, really. We get requested by so many schools, we have to turn down throughout terms as well. Our terms are always booked.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what kind of health program the school has as well.
Yeah.
If they have a strong kind of sexual health foundation there, then they might not request us for that kind of stuff. But whether, a school in the rural, they might not have much access to health. So then that's when they'll ask us to come out.
Do you have any favourite schools that you always like to visit?
No, I've been not dropped there. But
I really like going to rural schools. I'm from the city, so it's different to go meet young people that are riding horses, that are on quad bikes every day. Here's us like skating, catching the bus, just different worlds meeting.
And their scenery is beautiful too, man.
Word.
They're out in farmlands or mountains. It's like,
cool.
Snap.
Yeah.
You guys obviously love your job.
Yeah, we're super lucky and blessed.
Yes, man.
It's not a job that everyone can, gets to have in their lifetime, but I think that's why we're so just passionate. It's, we got the opportunity, let's just run with it.
What an inspiring duo. In our next story, Stuart Crosby, Mayor of Tauranga, chats to Hillary in one of her last interviews.
Funding growth into the future in terms of infrastructure, and also how we're dealing with our ongoing flood protection regime. So those have been the two biggest issues the elected members and myself have been turning our minds to put together to a budget to take out to the community from the 20th.
The LTP states we're expected to have population growth in Tauranga. I mean, the numbers have been wrong in the past. Can we rely on those numbers now?
Good question. Yes, we've done a lot of work and research with NEDIA, which is out of the Waikato University in terms of demographics. So we believe we have quite a good handle on what our population is going to be. But at the end of the day, you know, things happen nationally and internationally that can change that. And that's what happened last time when the GFC came along. Our growth stopped. And then 2014 it came back again. And 15, 16 and 17 we see no reason why it's not going to continue. Last year we built 1,000 new homes plus, and I believe this year 15 and into 16 and 17 will probably do well over 1,000 a year as well. So the people are coming from all over the place, internationally and nationally, and we see no reason why our predictions this time won't be robust. But you know, at the end of the day, we have to check it all the time because things happen that change it.
Do you think we're still feeling, or well, the council is still feeling the repercussions of getting those numbers wrong in the past?
What happens is those numbers determine investment. And yes, about 8 years ago, when we were growing rapidly, we put a lot of investment in the ground, as you had to. Then all of a sudden the population growth pegged back a bit. But it's come back, and fortunately we did have that investment in the ground because you can't ramp up investment and infrastructure quickly. It often has a long lead-in time, particularly roads, wastewater, water, things like that. You can't just turn it on in 5 minutes, but it can turn off in 5 minutes. So we're well prepared for our growth moving forward, and our philosophy is to provide infrastructure to service growth just in time, not too late because it causes a problem, and not too soon because you're putting investment in the ground ahead of time, which has a cost to it.
What kind of infrastructure have you put into place?
Look, it's the basics with growth. So again, if we're looking ahead, the cost of our growth in the 10-year plan is about $400+ million, calculated to be 421, but it could be between 400 and 450, you just don't know. And that will have an operational cost of around $138 million. And that's primarily, again, for wastewater, it's primarily for a major road in Papamoa, and also car parking facilities here in the CPD at $25 million. And also potentially a new water treatment station the other side of Te Puke at around $65 million, and also our open spaces, parks and reserves. So nothing flashy, just good old basic infrastructure that our community would expect our council to provide on time.
So the Southern Pipeline, that still gets the go-ahead?
It's been going ahead for 5 years, and it's not a project you can just stop. So the Southern Pipeline is a major wastewater treatment pipeline, basically from Paismar through to our wastewater treatment station in Tamanga. It has been installed in different stages. When those stages are installed, it's utilised as a storage, and the last phase, just over $30 million, is the cross harbour stage, and it's the most challenging, obviously, so that's out for tender now.
Do you think we still are, as a city, catching up with wastewater development?
No, but the issue we had with our wastewater was when we had heavy downpours of rain, there was inundation of rainwater into our wastewater system, and that's quite common in New Zealand. But for us, it was then overflowing into our harbour on odd occasions, and that was totally unacceptable. Hence the $106 million investment in the Southern Pipeline, which is twofold. One, it's an environmental project, and obviously is to provide for growth into the future.
Why then do we still have some of those big problems with overflow, some of the worst in the country?
Oh, well, we're not, actually. Coastal cities up and down New Zealand have this issue, but we made a commitment to address it, and it's an expensive commitment. So the Bay Plenty Regional Council monitor our waters, and we have a good relationship with them, and we made a commitment that we would take whatever is necessary to prevent overflows. And bearing in mind, they happen very rarely, but one, from our perspective, is one too many.
There's also the unconfirmed greenfield growth. Are those expected to be in Tauranga City Council areas?
Possibly a mixture. Through our smart growth management strategy, we're looking ahead for the next 20 years to see where our population is going to go. So at the moment we have areas already set aside for urban growth, particularly in Papamoa, Pies Pa, Ohauidi, Welcome Bay and Bethlehem, but they're filling up. So we want to be ahead of time, and again the lead in time for these things is quite substantial, as well as the investment. So in fact this week we're getting some early reports to see where our settlement pattern review is going to take us, but ultimately most of it will be in the Tauranga City Council's jurisdiction and also the Western Bay of Plenties.
Will the government's housing accord and the areas of special housing be taken into consideration for the long-term plan?
Yes, it is, because that also may have some infrastructural requirements, but most of our special housing areas are in the existing part of Tauranga, and one of the requirements we had was to, one, make sure that there were no flooding issues and there was existing capacity in our infrastructure to service those housing accord areas.
Financially, how much is expected growth cost predicted to affect that the council's overall budget, I guess?
It's quite significant. It's over $400 million moving forward over the next 10 years, with over $138 million of operational costs as well. So it's a big issue that we face. It's a great issue though. You know, I'd rather be in the position of a growing city than one that's stagnant and or going into recession. So I'm not complaining about it, but it does have some challenges with it, both financially and physically putting in the infrastructure as well. And it also has impact on our debt, of course. And so whilst we're getting our debt reduced by the sale of our toll road, Route K, moving forward, this group of elected members has determined to make sure our debt is under 500 million over a 10-year period, and it is. So it varies between 380 million and just under 500 million. But bearing in mind our rating base is growing, our population is growing over that decade as well.
So the debt of Tauranga City Council is not a worrying issue?
It doesn't keep me up at night, but it is an issue. And so what we have done is reduced our income to debt ratio significantly. It used to be a maximum of 250%. You'll see in this LTP it's often under 200 or around 220. So that's quite a significant reduction in risk to our balance sheet.
To finish off the show, we decided to take a look back at the musical genius that is Brian Rawiri. What a talented young man. Thank you for watching Central News. We post everything online on our website, tvcentral.co.nz, and we also like to keep in touch with our viewers on Facebook. Search centralnews.tv. Otherwise, if you think you might have a story lead for us, email news@tvcentral.co.nz. We always would love to hear from you. I will be back on screens tomorrow night with more stories from the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty. I'm Amanda Harper. Have a good night. Ko Marie.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.